Do I just cut them up like regular chickens?
Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
ERASERHEAD is a 1977 horror film that's written and directed by David Lynch. So ERASERHEAD wasn't the subscriber poll winner, but it came in really close second, competing with Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon was the winner. I'm going to be reviewing that either this weekend or next weekend. Either way, I decided that I was gonna rewatch and review ERASERHEAD because ERASERHEAD is a film that I've been dying to rewatch and really share my thoughts about it with you guys. Because I've talked about a handful of David Lynch films on this channel. So far I've talked about Inland Empire and Blue Velvet. And I actually think that might be it, actually. I still need to see Twin Peaks the show and then the movie. I still gotta see Wild at Heart. So there's plenty of other David Lynch films that I really need to see. But ERASERHEAD is just one of those classic Lynch films that I feel like I really haven't gotten to talk at all about yet. And what's amazing about this film is that, one, I believe it's David Lynch's directorial debut in terms of making a full-length film. And also, this is a film that a lot of horror fans know about. Like, you don't even have to be huge into art house cinema to really like this film. I think as long as you just have a deep appreciation for horror, you can get on board with this film, no matter how absolutely batshit and bizarre it is. I think there's enough in here for any horror fan to really appreciate and enjoy. But with that being said, what are my general thoughts about ERASERHEAD? So ERASERHEAD is a film that I saw, the last time I saw it had to be about 6 years ago. Same with Blue Velvet. I kind of watched ERASERHEAD, Blue Velvet, and Mulholland Drive like 6 years ago. I kind of had a Lynch binge about 6 years ago. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to rewatch some of these films. I just released a review out for Blue Velvet, I believe a few weeks ago, so if you want to check that out, go ahead. Oh, and that reminds me, I have talked about Mulholland Drive. I just haven't done a review for it, but it was in my top 12 favorite movies, I think, or top 25 favorite movies. I think I made that list like 2 years ago. I have to make an updated one. So, after rewatching this film after so many years, honestly, I think that this film is up there with Mulholland Drive as some of his best work. Because this is a film that's incredibly impressive on every single phase that I can really think about. Because this is a film that not only is it just really unrelenting and extremely unsettling and terrifying, and really just making you feel off and awkward in ways that I feel like a lot of films don't really achieve, but this is a film where David Lynch, I feel, found the perfect mix of avant-garde and experimental cinema, mixing that with traditional horror elements, but also not being so out there and avant-garde to where, like, you just can't grasp anything that it's going for. And I think those are really my favorite kind of films. Films that establish certain themes that I feel like, at least for me, are really easy to pick up on. Things that just seem really obvious. Like in this film, it's infidelity, it's marriage, it's meeting the parents, which is like one of the most awkward things people have to do in their life, unplanned pregnancy, poverty even. So I feel like this film has a lot of themes that it establishes quite clearly that an audience member like me can really latch onto and understand in terms of what this film is going to explore. So when it goes down the more bizarre and abstract and ambiguous approach, it at least gives you a really great foundation for your mind to really try to interpret everything that it was trying to go for with a lot of those really disgusting and abstract images. Because, as I said, it does a great job at letting the audience know that this is what the film is essentially going to be about. So, as long as you have that foundation, it makes the film a lot funner to watch and a lot funner to interpret because you have a base to work off of. And when I say that this film is extremely anxiety inducing and has a lot of bizarre and disgusting images, I am not over exaggerating. This film is honestly probably one of the more unsettling and terrifying films that I've seen. And that I think that's really what I love so much about this film as well, is that it works so well as a horror film, because this film truly makes me feel that unsettling feeling that I don't really feel that much in horror films anymore. And it's because it's incredibly surreal and is incredibly daring and bold to go down these really dark and just utterly disgusting roads. But besides it just being really grotesque, it's just really odd and bizarre. Like, I know I've said bizarre probably a lot already in this review, but it's kind of the best way to describe this film. And I think that's one of the better things to give to people before they go into it, so that way they kind of know what to expect. I think bizarre is the exact way to describe it, because there are scenes in this film that are truly unlike anything that you'll ever see. And some of it is so absurd that you just can't help but laugh at it, because that's just like what your body's telling you to do, because it's just so out there and just unlike anything that we would consider to be normal behavior. Like that scene with the miniature chickens and the mom's reaction to it. Scenes like that are just kind of like, what the hell was going on in your mind, David Lynch? Like, what kind of fucking angel dust were you smoking that day? But I love the thematic conveyances and the thematic approaches in this film, because as I said, this film, to me, I feel like is a lot about relationships, infidelity, meeting the parents, unplanned pregnancy, everything like that. So I love the way that it demonstrates this stuff, because I feel like it's just an extremely surreal and exaggerated version of what people feel in these kinds of situations on the inside. And again, it's just kind of this really extended version of really displaying the kind of emotions and contexts of what people are truly feeling when they have to go through these situations. Again, like the dinner scene that I mentioned, the whole atmosphere of meeting someone's parents, and the whole child aspect, and the child crying all night, and I just love the way that I think a lot of what this film is doing is basically this surreal and hyperbolic interpretation of our sensories and our emotions when we are experiencing these things. And I love how this film demonstrates that, because it really makes it that much more horrific, really terrifying, because this entire film feels like this incredibly frightening, surreal nightmare. And a lot of that is because of the imagery that's explored in this film, but it's also the atmosphere, and I can't even believe I haven't mentioned this up until this point. It's a shame that it took me this long to mention this, but the sound design and the sound editing plays a gigantic part of one's experience watching this film, and is one of the reasons why it feels like this really immersive, nightmarish, and surreal experience. Pretty much every single scene in this film has some sort of delicate and purposeful use of sound editing and sound design that, again, really makes it feel like a nightmare. There's a lot of experimenting with frequencies of sounds, and also just a lot of natural sounds that are incorporated in really upsetting ways. Like the whole scene with the puppies feeding off the mother, and just the use of crickets and cicadas as well. But again, also just the frequencies of just really high and low sounds that really provoke that uncomfortable feeling inside you through this entire film. And this is just a great use of aesthetic design here, because the direction is fantastic. I heard some people complain about the pace, but for me, the pace is perfect. Like, this is the exact kind of slow paced and slow burn kind of horror film that I would want, because yeah, like, the pace is unconventional and it's not really moving at a rapid speed, but it never loses your engagement. And that's really the key. Like, if you don't really feel unengaged, then it's doing its job right. And for me, I was engaged in this film from start to finish. I was completely immersed in this nightmarish world. And again, huge props to David Lynch for directing the shit out of this movie, because the camera work and the pace is fantastic. The imagery that this film offers is just out of this fucking world. And just the horrific way that David Lynch explores the themes in this film, just not only does it work on a horror level for just making you feel absolutely unsettled and feel like you're on the verge of a panic attack this entire movie, but it's actually just really thought-provoking as well. And it's one of those films that after it's over, you just can't stop talking about it, and you want to talk about it with everybody that you know that has seen it already. And to me, this is just like the best kind of horror film you can find. But what's really admirable about this film as well, which is something I haven't talked about yet for some reason again, is that this film was made on a shoestring budget. Apparently, according to IMDb, this was made on the budget of $10,000. That's like nothing. Like, that is, for everybody who knows about how much it costs to make a film, that's literally nothing. And the fact that he was able to achieve special effects, especially the special effects that are this good. I mean, the practical effects that are used in this film, you really couldn't ask for better practical effects. It is just pitch perfect. Everything just feels absolutely believable, and the fact that he was able to craft that up with just a budget of $10,000 is absolutely insane. But just everything else, just be able to achieve this level of atmosphere and aesthetic is quite amazing off of just $10,000. Like, that's really inspiring. So yeah, I'm deeply in love with this film. I think that if you're a horror fan, you could really get a lot out of this, even though you might not understand a damn thing about it, which is okay. I don't think David Lynch really expects people to truly understand this film. But also, like, if you're just a huge fan of just experimental avant-garde type of cinema, this should be right up your alley. And surreal cinema, this should really deliver a lot on what you want out of it and what you're expecting out of it. This is definitely up there for me when it comes to David Lynch's best stuff. Right now, Mulholland Drive, Eraserhead, best stuff that David Lynch has ever done. I know that some people are kind of like the Blue Velvet type crowd and think like that's a true masterpiece. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's honestly as masterful and as admirable as a film like Eraserhead or Mulholland Drive, just me personally. But with that being said, I'm going to give David Lynch's Eraserhead a 10 out of 10. I was really battling with myself in regards to what grade I was going to give this film, because I knew that I was in love with it, but I really didn't want to be so biased to give it that perfect grade. But the thing is, like, this is exactly the type of horror films that I think are absolutely masterful, and these are the kind of horror films that I wish maybe more filmmakers would kind of strive to make. Maybe not like in the same David Lynch style, but as I mentioned, like, try to establish these, you know, foundational themes in the film that you kind of make somewhat clear to the audience, and then just through that foundation, just really go wild and just let your imagination take you to places where you're really unafraid to explore. And I feel like this film accomplished that perfectly. And just based on that foundation, I love how interpretive this film is and how easy it is to spark a discussion after you're done watching it. But anyways, that's what I got to say about Eraserhead. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about it, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.